Hello and welcome to Kingdom Gathering. My name is Tim Brown, and I wanted to take a moment to make another video to help further explain some more dreams that I've had over the last several years that may give some context into the previous things that I've shared in the last 2 or 3 videos that I've made on this channel. As you know, I've believed and taught now for a while that there is coming a storm, a spiritual storm in this country that is going to leave some very difficult days in front of us. And if you remember in the last couple of videos, I shared with you all that God spoke to me a few weeks ago and told me that there is going to be an even longer trail of tears, that there's going to be some things that will happen in our nation that will cause some divisions, possible civil war, if not revolution, that is going to lead to the mass evacuations or migrations of people from one place to another. If you remember in the last couple of videos, I shared with you not only some dreams that I had, but also some dreams and a prophetic word that was spoken by somebody else that seems to suggest that possibly in the not too distant future there's going to be a civil war or some type of event or thing or series of events that's going to cause division in our nation. We're already seeing division in our nation today all over the place, and it doesn't seem like it's going to take much for this powder keg to be lit and explode in front of our faces. So I want to share with you some other dreams that God has given me since 2017 that may play into events that we see over the next few months. Again, I don't have necessarily any time frame in mind, but I want to share these with you. Again, I don't make any claims other than the fact that these are dreams that God has given me, that these are dreams that I believe are significant. I've kept a prayer journal since about the year 2009, and one of the blessings and benefits that you get from keeping a prayer journal is that over time you begin to see patterns, you begin to see themes that develop, and as you pick up upon those things, you begin to learn to see with eyes that see and hear with ears that hear, and you begin to kind of put some things together about what God is doing long term in your life and in the lives of other people around you, and also in the life of the nation. So I want to share a few dreams. Every one of these dreams that I'm going to share with you are about meteors that I have seen that are coming to the earth, that are going to hit the earth. Okay. Ever since 2017, I've had, let's see, I believe I have about 5 different dreams here that all talk about meteors hitting the earth. Okay. So I'm just gonna read these. I'm just gonna go through them one at a time. The first one I call the coming meteors dream. I had this dream on September the 21st, 2017. September the 21st, 2017. It says this: "This morning I woke from a dream unlike any I've ever had before. I was with a group of people at night in a house, and all of a sudden I hear someone say, 'Whoa, something's wrong with the sky. What's going on?' So my wife and I went outside with the group of people and we looked up. The sky looked very strange. The stars were extremely bright, way more brighter than usual. And it looked almost like they were vibrating, which would give the effect of them looking bigger. The sky itself, the color, everything about the sky just did not look right. Then, close to the horizon, I could see a large cluster of stars that were extremely bright and moving. And as I watched more carefully, I immediately said out loud, 'Wait a minute, those are not stars, those are meteors.' And at that moment, the bright whiteness, as these meteors exploded into our atmosphere, it lit up the entire sky, bright white, bright red, and it broke through our atmosphere. And I remember hearing these loud sonic booms, and it shook the ground beneath me. And the meteors started hitting everywhere. And everywhere that these meteors hit, it caused big explosions all over the place. And that was the end of the dream. So I had that dream in September 21st of 2017. Here's the second dream. I had this dream on June the 26th, 2019. June the 26th, 2019, a couple years later. I call this the Meteor and Tsunami vision. Actually, I apologize. Let me back up. This is not a dream. This is an actual vision. So I've mentioned in the past that part of my quiet time is I spend a couple hours with the Lord in the morning. And sometimes I will sit in silence before the Lord, and it's sometimes during those times of silence where I will begin to see images light upon my mind, and I will begin to receive information. That's how visions work. They're visions. They're things that you see that light upon your mind that don't come from you thinking about them. They come from the spirit world, from the Spirit Himself. So in my quiet time with the Lord, I closed my eyes, and when I began hearing the sound of the ocean. I remember that too. It sounded just like I could hear the ocean. And I was kind of shocked. And so I opened my eyes again in the vision. I opened my eyes, and I remembered the very first thing I saw was a palm tree. It was like I was lying on the ground. I was lying on sand, and I could see the palm tree and the leaves of the palm tree just kind of going back and forth over the sun, and just kind of making the light dance back and forth on my face. The first couple of moments of the vision was actually very peaceful. And I realized that again, I was at the beach. And so in the vision, I stood up, and I knew that Jesus was there. I couldn't see Him. I couldn't make out a form per se, but I knew that it was Him. And all of a sudden, I could hear His voice, and He said, "What do you see?" And I said, and I did, I looked up and I could see the sun. And what was strange about it is it wasn't just the sun. I could see the sun, and right below the sun, a little bit to the right, but right below the sun, a little bit to the right, I could see what looked like three very large stars. Now, I know enough about the constellations to know what those three stars were. I knew that I was looking at the belt of Orion. Right, so when you think of the belt of Orion, you have those three little stars, and the third one's kind of up a little bit, right? So I said back to His voice after I heard Him speak. I said, "I see the sun and what looks like three very large white stars to the lower right of it." I heard Him reply, "From this direction." And it was then I saw a large meteor strike at the distance in the horizon. It came right over me, right over my head, and it struck right down at the horizon. And as soon as it struck, I heard this loud boom sound, and a very big tidal wave began to form, and it grew and it grew and it grew, and it started getting higher and higher and higher. And I remember I was standing on the beach looking up at this thing, and it got so big, it covered the sunlight. It got so big it masked or blotted out the sun above me. And so where I was standing in the vision, it became almost like night because the tsunami was so big. And so obviously I became very afraid. I started shaking. I started becoming very nervous and scared. And it was at that point that Jesus took my hand in the vision, and He said, "Do not be afraid. I will not let this hurt you. Do not be afraid. I will not let this hurt you." And so it was the wave, the tsunami went past, and it was almost as if we went through it or something like that, but we were kind of on top of it. And I remember looking down, and this tsunami it just went so far inland, and it destroyed everything in its path. And I knew that everything up and down the coastline was just gone. It was just gone. It had just wiped out everything. And then the vision ended. Okay? So that's the second experience that I had that showed me a meteor. Okay? Now I'm going to share with you a series of two dreams. They happened exactly 20 days apart. And I call them the first meteor dream and the second meteor dream. And what's unique about this is that at the time where I was serving in the congregation where I was at, we had three elders. And in one dream, one elder shows up, and in the second dream, a second elder shows up. Now I'm not going to say their names. Obviously, I knew who they were in the dream, but I'm not going to make any personal names or anything like that. And I don't even think that that's necessarily important. But what I want to do is I want to share these two dreams together because I believe they go together, okay? One dream explains what happens in the physical world, in the physical realm, and the second dream shows more what happens in the spiritual realm. There's something very spiritual, I believe, that's going to happen at the time when these meteors actually begin hitting the earth. And I do believe that these are literal. Okay, I know that some people in the dream interpretation world believes that meteors hitting the earth somehow symbolizes revival. I'm not one of those. I don't tend to believe that because I would think that if it had to do with revival, you would see a lot of joy and dancing and praising God. That's not what these dreams are showing. Now, again, you've heard me say from previous videos that I do believe that we are in the last days and that there will be a final last days harvest. But I don't think that that's necessarily what these dreams are signifying. I think these dreams are signifying that we have some very difficult, calamitous events that are on the horizon, and that it will be during that dark time when darkness rises that we will see the children of light begin to shine even brighter. And that's when we're going to see the final last days harvest. Okay, so here's the first meteor dream, which is actually the third dream or vision that I've had about meteors, but I'm just going to go ahead and read this to you. Okay, August the 4th of 2019, this is when I had this dream. In the dream, my family and I arrived home in our minivan. It was late at night, it was pitch black outside, and I noticed that there was a bus that was parked in my front yard. And so my wife and I got out of the van and we went over and we started talking to the driver of the bus. I walked over and I looked in it and I noticed that it was one of the former elders where I served at the church for the last 6 years. And it was about that time that my kids get out of the minivan and they were being a little bit noisy. And this driver of the bus, this elder, this person who was in there, he looks over at the kids and he goes, shh, real long like that. Shh, tell them to be quiet because people are sleeping. Tell them to be quiet because people are sleeping. So I walked into the house with the kids and then I noticed that my kids were acting a little bit strange. One of my kids looks at me and says, "Dad, why is it light outside? It's not morning yet, is it?" And so I looked outside and it looked like the sun was coming up. It was getting bright outside, but it was the middle of the night. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. So I knew that wasn't right. And as I walked toward the back door, it looked like it was literally daylight outside. So I knew something wasn't right. Something was wrong. So at that moment, inside my heart, I knew what was happening. I said to myself, and this is what I said to myself in the dream, I knew meteors were coming next. We've been seeing so many signs of the birth pains lately, and I sensed that we would start seeing meteors next, and this is it. And so I looked up at the sky, and I could see balls of fire just breaking apart and streaming, just leaving streaks of smoke all the way across the sky, leaving smoke behind them. And so they were meteors. They were entering our atmosphere. And the light was so bright that it was lighting up the sky. It was making it look literally daylight, even though it was the middle of the night. And so I ran through the house. I went out the front door, and I got into the front yard, and I looked straight up into the sky. And as I went out, this very large meteor passed right over our house, and it hit in the horizon. And when it hit in the horizon, it caused this super large explosion, this super bright light. And I said to myself, standing in my front yard, no more doubting. These are indeed the last days, and it's time to prepare. Now, that's the first meteor dream. Now, here's the second one. This one came exactly 20 days later. All right. Now, there's some elements to this dream that are very, very personal, and I'm not going to share the whole dream because, well, anyway, there's some parts of this dream that I've learned are very, very personal for my family, and that's not really what I'm trying to get into here. What I'm trying to get into here is this theme that God has been showing me over the last several years about meteors that are going to be hitting our Earth at some point. So here's what I said. Exactly 20 days later, I had a second dream about the meteor. This time giving me more information about some of the spiritual realities that will be happening during the time that this happens. In the first scene of this dream, I'm at a fair, like a state fair, and I'm with a woman. She works for the fair, and we were looking at several booths, several makeshift booths. The place was run down. It was not well kept. I could see this one little rundown, like little food snack shop type place, and that there was another booth there that was reserved for us, for our family. And we were being invited to have our own little business at this fair, okay? So the woman at the fair was showing me all these areas of the fair, and she was telling me that the owner of the fair wanted me to join the fair, wanted me to help run the business at the fair for the benefit of the fair. And she was talking to me in such a way as to make me feel obligated. She was like, this is a really good deal. You should do this because da 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 da, whatever. She could tell that I was not very interested, and she was becoming offended by the fact that I was not interested. But she was kind of like, do you not realize how much of a good deal this is? That, you should feel obligated to be here and do what we're asking you to do. So she continued, and she even went on to talk about how we would organize the deal. She's like, oh, we can set this up under Tim Brown Industries, and you can make money, and you can do this and that. And so she kept encouraging me to go with the owner's deal because she thought it made good financial sense to do so. And again, I disagreed. The woman then looks at me and she gets offended, and she says something to the effect of, well, you're just ungrateful, and your family's unorganized. And she made some personal shots at me and my family, and she kind of storms off. She was not happy with me. She started getting very judgmental toward me and judgmental toward our family. Now, the next scene is the one that I want you to listen to, the most important part. In the next scene, we walk over to where the owner of the fair was, and I began to talk with him about this deal that she wanted me to make with them. And so I'm talking with the owner of the fair under his tent. And it was then the scene changes again to the third scene. And my attention drifts away from the owner of the tent. It's there where the second elder from the church where I served for the last 6 years was there under the tent. First dream was one elder, second dream a different elder. The owner of the fair and this other elder were having a conversation with each other about how they think that I should be serving that fair under that boss. And I disagree with them. So as they're talking about things, all of a sudden, I kind of tune out what they're saying, and I noticed that right across from me, there's this little wooden box. And I was kind of drawn to this little wooden box, and I noticed that it had these little flip numbers on the front of them. For those of you who are a little bit older, you'll remember back in the 80s, though, we had those old, those old alarm clocks, right? They had the little flip numbers on them, right? Well, there were two flip numbers on there, and it said 5, 5. 5, 5. Had the number 5 on one side, had the number 5 on the other, on this little square wooden box. And in the dream, I said to myself, something's about to happen. God's wanting me to pay attention to something here. I've completely tuned out the other elder and the owner of the fair completely. I'm not listening to them anymore because I realize that something is about to happen. And right when I said that to myself, the two cards flipped, and up popped two kings, like playing cards, two different kings. And it's at this point that I see a large, bright meteor falling slowly across the sky toward the ground. And as it was falling, it lit up the whole sky. And in my heart, here's what I said to myself in the dream. I remember it just like it was yesterday. I said, I know what this is. Because in the dream, I was remembering that I've already had a bunch of other dreams about meteors, right? So I said to myself, I know what this is. This is the meteor that I saw in my dream not that long ago. I knew what was about to happen. I knew it was about to hit right over the horizon, just like I'd seen it before in my last dream. And I knew it was about to explode. So I ran over to my wife and I said to her, honey, this is that meteor that I saw in my last dream. I know what's going to happen. And so I hugged my wife close because I didn't know if we were about to die from the explosion. My wife was there, my kids were there, my whole family was there, the elder was there, the owner of the fair was there. And we watched as the meteor struck in the distance. Now, this is where the dream is different from the first one that I had 20 days earlier. The place was filled with light. The meteor hits and it causes this super big bright explosion, right? And this shock wave comes out from the explosion. And what happened was that everything went from very bright to very black. So it went from light to dark, if that makes any sense. It was a big, bright, white explosion that almost blinded you, but it was almost like that void that it created just filled up with this thick, black darkness. And it kept expanding. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it stopped right before the shockwave came to my wife and I. We were still embracing each other. We thought we might be about to die, but it didn't get to us. Just when we thought it was over, a very large, almost like a 3-story tall, demonic, beastly looking figure just started walking right out of that blackness. He just emerged out of the smoke and revealed himself to everyone around. And it was terrifying. It was horrible. I mean, it was just a hideous looking creature. And he looked fierce, and he was ready to kill, and he was ready to devour anything and anybody around him. And he began yelling and boasting, and he was saying that he had come to kill and destroy. And every single time this demonic being spoke, the earth would shake around us. And I looked at my wife, and I said, Tiffany, we have got to get out of here. We've got to get out of here right now. And it was at that point that these other creatures started running out from the blackness. They looked like lions, but they were gray. They looked like death. They were dead looking, okay? But they started running out from the billowing fire and the smoke, and they ran in all directions. And one of the things that shocked me is that they literally could run up walls, okay? They ran up walls and sideways and upside down, and they were going out to kill and destroy. And I looked over at Tiffany, because at that point I was looking to see where our kids were, because I knew that we had to get out of there. And I said to my wife, this changes everything. Forget about the deal, forget about our business, forget about working at the fair, forget about all of that, because this literally changes everything. I knew that nothing would be the same after this event. And it was then that I started to wake up from the dream, and I was thinking about the lions. And I could hear the scripture play in my mind as I was waking up from the dream. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking or looking for someone to devour. And then I woke up. I know this video is going kind of long. I just want to share one more. This is the latest dream that I had about meteors. I had this dream on August the 23rd, 2021, just a few weeks ago. It's very short, and I'll stop here. But basically it says this: early this morning, I had a short dream, again about meteors. In the dream, I was standing outside. I looked down and I could see a pile of burnt coals. So it looked like somebody had, burned a bunch of coals in like a grill or something like that and poured them out. And I heard a voice behind me saying, reach down and pick up one of the burnt coals in your hand. And so I did. I reached down and I picked up one of the burnt coals in my hand and I held it up, just like this. I then heard that same voice say, now take the coal in your hand and squeeze it with all of your strength. And so I squeezed it with all of my strength, and the coal began to break and crumble in my hand. And I could see smaller pieces begin to fall out of my hand and fall to the ground, all over the ground. And it was then that I had a vision inside the dream. That's very unique. I think I've only had that happen maybe one other time. But after I saw the pieces of the coal begin to fall to the ground, I began to have a vision in my dream, and I could see the same meteor that I had seen in all those previous dreams and that one vision that I had a long time ago. But I could see this meteor coming down to the earth, and when it got close to the earth, when it got close to the atmosphere of the earth, it began to break into many, many, many smaller pieces. And those many smaller pieces began to fall and make impact all over the earth. Many of them fell into the ocean, into the Atlantic Ocean. Many of them fell on the United States of America. Many of them fell into Europe and other places. It was all over the place. Okay, so that's it. I wanted to share those dreams with you. Again, I have no concept of timing with any of this, but the reason why I feel that it's time to release all of these dreams to you all is because of what God said a few weeks ago. There is going to be an even longer trail of tears. And so as I look back into my own prayer journal and try to understand maybe why that's the case, I felt like it was important to share these dreams with you. Take these to the Lord, pray about them yourself. If you've had similar dreams or visions or experiences, I would love to hear about them. Please comment down below. Send me a message if you like. Again, I'm going to say the same thing that I said before. I believe that we're living in the last days. Life is not ever going to go back to normal, not the normal that you and I grew up with. I believe that we're coming to the very end of the age. It's not a time to be afraid whatsoever. Jesus told us a long time ago. He said that these things would happen, that there would be all kinds of calamities that would happen, and they would be like birth pains that would happen right before the coming of the Son of Man. Jesus said, lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. So I don't say these things to make anybody afraid, but I do say these things because I believe with all of my heart that in these last days, just as he promised in the book of Acts chapter 2, and just as he promised in the book of Joel chapter 2, he is pouring out his Spirit upon all flesh. Why? Because the Bible tells us that he's not willing that anybody should perish, but that all should come to repentance. So if you have walked away from the Lord, it's time to stop and turn around and come back. That's the definition of repentance. Come to the Lord. If you've not made a decision to put on Christ in baptism, if you haven't made a decision to become a believer in Christ, make that decision right now. And don't wait any longer. Find a group of people that you can be disciples with and seek to obey God with your whole heart. He loves you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming to this channel, Kingdom Gathering. I hope to make some more videos in the future. Until then, God bless you and have a good day.